G'day fellow flight simmers and random YouTubers. That's right, this is going to be the moment we've all been waiting for. This is going to be bigger than 20th Century Fox. It's going to be bigger than Ben-Hur. This is going to take you places. So, without further ado, as I've promised, I'm going to do my first stream as a pilot. Now, this could go very pear-shaped because I've only just recently started. But as you can see, we're in Hobart, and what I'm going to be doing is this flight here. We're going from Hobart to Melbourne, and it looks like the weather in Melbourne is not too good. I believe it'll probably be an RNAV approach into runway 34. So here we are then. I've set up the sim brief, and I'll show you that on the electronic flight bag there. And how you going, Gav? I hope it turns out fantastic. I've actually sussed everything out except the landings, and the landings could be total shite. If it looks like it's going to be rough for the landing, I'll tell you, I'll just well, you can all have a laugh at me, I suppose. Anyhow, let's get into it. Now, I've just progressed to the jets, and it's actually been okay. Now, I'm not sure how people learn things, but the way I learn things is I actually try to work out a concept, and I try to understand why things are done the way they've done. Now, this in no way is a tutorial. You can take it for what it is. There might be young blokes out there trying to learn this aircraft. Sometimes you can watch 100 videos, but it takes that one video to think, oh yeah, the penny drops. And it's certainly been the case with me. I've watched different videos, and some people can teach, some people can't. Whether I can teach or not is a different story. We'll see. So let's hope, if you're a young person, or anybody, it doesn't have to be young, you could be an old codger like me. You don't have to be young, but if you can take something away from it, all the better. And also the feedback. If somebody can tell me something that I could do better, or I've done something not quite right, well, by all means, I'm here to learn just as much as you guys. But anyhow, so let's sit back with your chai tea, and mine, by the way, is cold. Oh yeah, that's cold. Oh God, that's cold. Or wherever you are, you could sit back with your chai tea or your frappe, whatever a frappe is, by the way, I don't know, or your little glass of sherry, if that's your inclination, and let's get into it. And by the way, that's who I am, Velocity 1313 today. So, the first thing you've got to understand is you've got this cold and dark aircraft. The first thing you've got to do to make anything work, and most things, is you've got to establish electrical power. So what you've got the overhead panel up here. Right up the top here, you've got the battery. You connect the battery and all these lovely lights come on. And then you've got the emergency exit lights. They're the next thing which you see in the aircraft. Okay, so now to establish ground power, we go down to FMC. We've got FS actions, ground services. You've got ground power request. We'll get this, what they call GPU, ground power unit. Once we see the release there, we know that it's connected, and through the beauty of MSFS, we can go outside and see what the ground power looks like. So it's there, and it's there. It's that little, so you can see it's all connected up. So let's, so once we know it's connected, we've got ground power available unit. So we just flick this down, and everything springs into life. So we got ground power. So the next thing we do is, and by the way, I'm doing this through this flow, they call it a flow, through what Ryanair do, and this is from a real world Ryanair pilot, he actually went through with this other guy, this other YouTuber. So I'm just following this flow. Now, there are other different flows depending on which company. I'm sure other companies have different flows, but at the end of the day, as long as you accomplish the same things. So the next thing is you check the gear. This is your gear lever. You make sure it's 3 greens. You go over here, check the flaps are up, which are up. And you go down to the next thing you've got to do is check the fire detection system. So what we do is we test this. We should see 2 orange lights, and we should see that. So now I'm not going to go into the system. Next is you check all the fire, make sure they're all good, and well, actually I should have. That lights up, and you get your fire warning and all that. So the fire detection system is working. We go over here and we check the what they call the squibs, and each engine has got basically, well, not each engine, you've got 3 fire extinguishers, and you can either direct both extinguishers into one engine, or you can extinguish or use one extinguisher on each engine, and the APU, the auxiliary power unit, has got its own extinguisher. So that's basically what you're checking there. And while we're there, we test the. Okay, so that's the cargo bay. So once we've done that, we check that the manual gear is down. Now, I've always said you can make flight simulation as realistic as you can. Now, the next thing you check circuit breakers and things like the emergency rope, up here, which is, see up here, but we're not going to, we just want to get this thing up in the air, but we're not going to shortcut a lot of things. I mean, there's no point checking circuit breakers because at the end of the day, I haven't sort of programmed the aircraft to have any failures. So there are things that I'm going to miss. So please, by no means, this is by no means comprehensive. But what I'm doing is I'm doing the important stuff, okay? So now we go up to the overhead panel right up here, and we listen to the max speed warnings. They call this the clackers, by the way. And then this gives you the stall area. I love it. And this, I don't know why that doesn't work, but anyhow, that's what you should hear. The next things we do the what they call the IRS, Inertial Reference System. And really, these guys here are unbelievable. These they provide a whole lot of information. They provide altitude, heading, acceleration, vertical speed, ground speed, a whole lot of things. And basically what you're doing here, in the old days before jets, you had to rely on ground-based navigation, whereas these things you don't have to rely on any ground-based navigation. So that's basically what the IRSs do. And now we go back and we check, we make sure all the lights work. So we light up and make sure it all works, and you go on the overhead. Okay, so now the next thing, we go down, we check the oxygen, which is down here, and if we press, okay, so we've done like the preliminary. Now, just recently, these guys have brought in the electronic flight bag. So I've done the sim brief, so I'm going to request information, and we can see here Hobart 737, velocity 1313, cost index. So what we do now, the next thing I like to do is you've got to basically enter where the aircraft is. You've got to actually confirm where the aircraft is. So what it says here down the bottom of the scratch pad, on the FMC, enter IRS position. So, and you've got here POS in at position initialization. And you can see I'm up to date with the AIRAC. I've just recently subscribed to Navigraph, by the way, because there's a reason for that. If I was just flying in Australia, I probably wouldn't. I really wouldn't worry. But I like to go to probably around Europe and later on, and that's for another time. So you can see here, set the IRS positions, because even though you've got them aligned as we turn the two navigation systems and the overhead, you've actually got to tell it. So you go to the next page. It's always this one, I believe. You go back to the previous page and it's copied down to the scratch pad, and there you are. Okay, so let's put in now there's ways you can actually, recently PMDG released this, you can put it in, but I'm going to do it long-handed. I'm not going to actually let the thing, I'm not going to let the computer or the FMC import it all in. I'm going to do it the long way. So and we're velocity 13, unlucky for some. And now sim brief route. Now it's got here now this is what I like to do it manually. You can get the thing to do it, but what I like to do, this is what I've downloaded from SimBrief, because there's a few things I like to do. The first thing is the fuel. Okay, so we see here the block fuel is 5.4. Now you basically round that up to 5.5, and according to this Ryanair guy, the Ryanair Real World Pilot, you add another 100. So we're going to carry about 5.6 tonnes of fuel. So we go to fuel, so we 5,600. Go back, payload. Now you go back to the SimBrief, and we're looking for 0 fuel weight, because that's really what matters. You can disregard this. Yeah, so anyhow, we're going to be 52.3. Okay, so we've set the payload and we've set the fuel. Okay, so what else do we do now? Now we put in our airway. So if we look at SimBrief and we scroll down, we can see that there it is there. We're going to be taking off. Are we going to take off runway 12? I guess we are. Okay. Okay, that's the LATAM 2. That's a SID. So we're going to LATAM, H11, Launch System, VOR, H215, Warren. And then we'll be landing at runway 34 in Melbourne. So whatever you do, you don't put, this is the only, from LATAM, all this information to Warren. So if you want to, actually I could write it down. No, actually I'll go back and, so LATAM H11 launch system. And H111 to LT. 14. When you see just 2 letters, it's normally a VOR. $215 to Warren. Okay, but you don't activate because next we've got to do departure and arrivals. So now let me just check something. Let's just check the weather. What's the weather like? 300 at 5 knots. Well, we're not going to take off 12. See, sometimes SimBrief gets it wrong. So I think we'll take off runway 12, runway 30. So let's go departure, runway 30, Latham 2, okay? And we go departure arrival, Melbourne. There's 6 pages. RNAV, Zulu, RNAV 34. And we go Warren 8 Alpha. Okay, so now just what we've got to do a step through. So what we do, we've got to go through here and we'll put this on plan mode and you'll see this come up. We go to our legs page and you can see CTR, that means it's centered. We're on, so centered. And if we do a step through, we're looking for if there's any discontinuities. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just go back, let's go to the charts. I just want to check something because I'm not really 100%. Just have a look at this Latham 2, what it... Okay, so it's going up to key to PDX, Canley, Latham. Okay. So this is where a lot of people get it wrong, by the way. Sis, how you going? Oh, so she's moved in. Oh, you are one lucky hell of a guy, I'll tell you. How you going, Chris? Good to see you. Good to see you, Glenn. Yes, the precursor to GNS. Yes, it is the PMDG. From my understanding, Glenn, the airways don't have that much of a significant. But there is a difference between the high and the lows. Now, to be honest, I'm not exactly sure of the actual... let me just check. Now, what am I looking for? Hang on, SimBrief. I'm not too sure. Just trying to look at Sky Vector because, like you say, I know, yeah, you're quite right about America. They do have significance. But in Australia, they don't really. I'm looking at Melbourne, and I'm just trying to think, what is there a difference between the Y and the Qs and the H? There is documentation for that, and I used to have it, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm not 100% sure, so I can't give you any sort of definite answer. You like that, do you? Oh, I've got other ones, I'll tell you. But anyhow, I'm being distracted here. So anyhow, we went through and we checked and we see that, okay. So we can see there's no I can't even say that word, but anyhow, you know what I'm trying to say. So we put it back onto map mode, and by doing that, you have this activated, and you see it, when I execute it, it goes purple. In other words, it's been put into the FMC, and basically it will be the FMC that gives us the inputs. But I'll explain that later on anyhow. And if you make a comment, because I've got two screens here, and the screen that I'm looking at the chat in will be covered by my flow from the RNAV. So every now and again I'll check, but so actually I've just worked it out. What a goose I am. I can still see it, and I've just shrunk down the page. Geez, what a genius. Anyhow, so I've actually, when you get to my age, you do a lot of thinking when you think about your life and how it's gone and all that, and to do a lot of reflecting in life and see how. But anyhow, my life has become sort of virtual. You know what I mean? Like I was virtual air traffic controller. Now I'm a virtual pilot. I probably even the sex is virtual now. I hope the wife didn't hear that. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, but I'm quite happy. If I was 35 years old in that position, I'd probably think twice about my life. But, I have no qualms sitting here. It's a lovely day over in Perth, 32 degrees. But here I am sitting in a computer but I'm quite happy. So, and the virtual sex, well, that could be better. But anyhow, let's get back to what we're talking about here. Yeah, well, I'm fully retired. Mate. That happened this time, actually this Friday last year, I fully retired. So anyhow, let's get back to the FMC. Let's flight management computer, and let's find out what's going on. So we got the route data in. Oh, hang on. Let's request the winds. Because what happens is if you, I should get a message down here soon. Did I click it? Anyhow, we'll see. I should get MSG, a little MSG here. Maybe not. It won't upload the winds. But the funny thing is, when you do a forecast winds, it actually uploads. Okay. So, this is the next page we've got to fill in. Cost index is 19 as per, and cost index roughly, without going into it, it's basically an algorithm that's worked out by the companies, and it's a measure of whether you want to use more fuel, but you go there faster. So premium airlines have a high cost index and they get to their destination faster, but they use a lot more fuel. That's why they charge more. Or you can have a low cost index like the low, Jetsstars and all this mob, and they have a low cost index, Ryanair, and they have a real low cost index. Takes you longer, but they save a hell of a lot of fuel. So that's what, it's a sort of a measure against getting there quicker or saving fuel. So that's a sort of a rough roundabout. Yeah, I know, I was always MSG, yeah, I know, monosodium glutamate. Okay, so let's go and have a look at our reserves. Our reserves are, we go back to and do the old scrolling, and it should tell us down here somewhere. Oh, I went past it, I think. FinRes and ALTN, 1.822, we rounded up to 1.9. So, and zero fuel weight, how's your memory, guys? I can't remember now, what was it, 52.9 or something? Not sure. Can't remember. I used to be able to remember. My memory used to be really good once upon a time. Now, I don't even know. I can't remember whether I put my pants on or not. Zero fuel weight, 52.3. No, is that right? 52.3. So we've planned for 5.6. The trip, now the computer says it's the best cruise level, depends on the winds, is 394, but we're going to go over and we're going to have a look. And right up the very top here, it should tell us what level we're going to be flying at. And you can see here it's 360. So we're going west from Hobart to Melbourne. We're going in a westerly even number, so that's all right. So we go flight level 360, so you just have to put 360. Now the cruise winds. Now this is something that people say, you use your average, but according to that average wind, 304 to 73, but this real world pilot, really, he said you should be putting your top of cruise out. So this is the wind at top of climb, 313 at 93. Holy crap. So that's, wow, we're going to have a hell of a headwind here. Oh, geez, this could take 4.5 hours to get to Melbourne. So 313 at 93. So, wow, that's a hell of a head. And transition altitude. Well, we know that in Australia it's 10,000. Okay. Difference between altitude and level. So your transition level is 110, altitude is 10,000, and the layer between 10,000 and flight level 110, that 1,000 is called the transition zone, which is you cannot fly in. Well, that's right. If you're 15, you're also happy being virtual. That's right, because, and we execute that. Because, hey, 15, geez, I know what I was like, I was 15. I remember 15 girls, well, the only reason girls were around is pull their ponytails. That's the only reason you thought girls were around at 15. But I was pretty naive back then. Anyhow, let's not start. Okay, let's have a look at this N1 limit. This is basically a way of what they call derating your engine, because you've got here this C24K N1. That means an N1. Now, if you think, what the hell is an N1? Basically, the engine of a jet engine is giant compressors, and you've got a low compressor and a high compressor. And I don't want to get into it, but N1 is a measure of, now I think it's the percentage, what's the right word I'm looking for? The percentage compression, no, that's not the right word, of the low compressor. And N2 is a percentage or revolutions of the fans, like 25% is like a quarter of their capabilities. So it's a percentage of the capability of the compressor. So N1 is your low compressor, N2 is your high compressor. And like I said, basically it sucks in air, and you've got an igniters, and it compresses them, and there's a spark in there. This thing blows up, and it gives you a way to. It gives you thrust, and then it goes through the exhaust. So that's a very rough sort of idea what a jet engine is. So we're going to derate the engine. Now you derate the engine by selecting a high temperature, and the higher the temperature, the longer it takes to take off, and you derate the engine. So by derating at TO1, you're using 22,000. Because it's a way of the airline company saving. Because if you're going to always use full power, well, the engine doesn't last long. But what they do, they derate it so the engines last longer. So we're going to derate it, and you'll see this figure up here change when I put the temperature in. So what I do is I go to the electronic flight bag up here, and we go to home. Sorry, we don't go. And we're going to be going to 30 elevation, there it is there, drive. Now with takeoff flaps, we're going to be taking off at 5, and we're going to be used takeoff 1. There's no anti-icing, of course, and we import the weather, and it tells us 305, QNH was 1006, so we do the old calculate, and we're looking at this. So you select temperature 45, and then these are your reference speed. So we're looking at 45. So let's go back here. If I put 45 in there, you'll see this figure change. Look at that. So from 95%, now we're going down to 90. So, you do this over the course of a lifespan of an engine. Thinking of heading down the VR and or motion sim track in retirement. Yeah, well, that's an option. That's certainly an option. Okay, so we've got the N1 limit. Now we go to takeoff. Now, like I said, we're going to be on flaps 5. The centre of gravity, basically what you do, you click it once, see scratch pad, and you click it twice. Now the trim, if anybody's ever flown, the trim is basically, you want to trim your aircraft when you're flying, and this is no exception. So in other words, you want to ease off on the controls, or how that feeling you have when you're trying to push down on the control and it's fighting your back. Well, that's because you haven't trimmed the aircraft properly. So what we do, we go down to this great big trim wheel down there, and I've got electronic trimmer on my honeycomb, and just trimming it down to about 5.3. It doesn't have to be exact. So that's good enough. So that's that, and we go to V1, V2, VR rotational speed, and V2, and yeah, V2 is basically if you have an engine out, that's what you have to continue. You've got to continue at that speed. If you have an engine out, flame out, something happens before V2, you can safely sort of cut your engines and come to a stop. But once you pass this V2, you have to continue. So that's basically what that V2 means. Okay, so we're done. Now, I've got to look at this. Just bear with me for a sec. Oh, geez, I tell you. That chai tea, it's lovely when it's hot. I'm trying to actually find the winds. Next page. Okay, all right, not to worry. Okay, so now once we've done with that and we're finished with that, we start what we call the overhead flow. And so we start up here and we go down, and then we start up here and go back down, and we start back down. So these all, you can see it's all in segments here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now before we get to that, let me just bear with me for a sec. I need to work out where I am in my flow with the Ryanair here, so I don't want to sort of lose Okay, so let's put it on the yaw damper, because that really, the yaw is, if anybody does flying, it's when you're making an uncoordinated turn. It just, and it shows actually on your display here. I'll show you up here, that there, that tells you if you're doing sides, what they call, if you're not doing a coordinated turn. So you've got this little arrow and this little bar underneath, and if this goes off to the side, it's not directly, you're making what they are on coordinated turns. So the yaw damper basically allows you to have a coordinated turn. That's my understanding, but hey, I could be wrong. Okay, so now we go through the nav lights, and they're all, you leave these on as per that. We look at the cross feed because sometimes you get an imbalance. So bright blue, then it should be light blue. Yep, that's fine. Now we've got these fuel tanks and we've got centre tanks. You've got the wing tanks and you've got the centre tanks. Now the first thing you've got to do is you check the centre tank here. You've got nothing in the centre tank. So what we do is we go and we put on, this is my understanding, I've read where people just turn on one because that's the feed, it's the it's one of the, you just turn on one because that's to feed the APU, but according to this real world pilot, he turns all of them on. So that's, and like I said, who am I to argue? I'm certainly going to follow what he's done. So you check the standby, that's all covered. We don't worry about the gens at the moment. Once we put the gens on till either we APU or the or the engines come on. The wipers are in the park position. Circuit breakers don't need to worry about. Equipment coolant, don't worry. Emergency exit lights are all armed. Now we go up here, chuck on the window heats. We leave the probe heats. If we turn the probe heats on, there's a danger of overheating. So we leave these off until we start taxiing. That's when we chuck these on. There's not icing conditions, so don't have to worry about that. Now, once you put the hydraulic pumps on, some people don't. Now, depending on which company rules, they leave the electric hydraulic pumps off, but once again, I'm just following what this real world guide does. That there is an indication, all these lights are indication of if you've got the cargo or the doors open. You see the forward entry door is open. Now, where are we? I've lost my spot. Okay, sorry about that. You can see here, this is the air conditioning. We see it's 40 degrees. So, and from my understanding, the 737 is notoriously bad for air conditioning. So we want to see that sort of. Now, this is the part I used to I didn't really get my head around that. I had to do some thinking. but I had to read up on it. But this is the air conditioning. So a recirculation fan is auto. I'm not exactly sure how that works. These are the packs, and let me just, if I can find it. Okay, so we put these onto auto, and the isolation valve can either be open or auto. I like to put mine on auto. Engine bleeds are both on for when you start. We haven't started the APU bleed, so basically bleed air is what the air provides for hydraulics and air conditioning. That is my understanding. Okay, this is the pressurization system. So we know we're going to be flying at 36,000. So yeah, I guess that's probably a good guess. Recirculation fans have an internal moving fair amount around bringing in air from the air outside. Yep. Now, landing altitude. Basically, it's Melbourne. I know Melbourne from. It's 434 feet airport elevation, and that's the landing altitude. But you can't put in 400, so you got to near it up for the nearest. Not the best English. Not the best English. So that's the landing altitude is the airport elevation. Okay, so once we do that, we now go over. Now it's time to put on the APU, and now the logo lights are really on for when you're at night time. You got the position strobe, that should be on steady. It's like your navigation light, and then your anti-collision light is your beacon light, which sits on top. I think that's, and then these during the day you leave these off, the wings and the wheel wells. Now this should be on left or right, doesn't matter. So now we're going to start the APU, which is the auxiliary power unit. Okay, so now you should see this thing here. This is the exhaust gas temperature indicator. It'll go up to about 800 and then come back down to about 400. And what we should do before we put the APU bleed on, we should be on for about a minute, the APU, before we put it onto we get the APU bleeds going. So we can see it rising. And then what should happen is this blue light for the APU gen should come on too. So it goes up to about roughly 800, and then it'll come back down, it'll stabilise. Once we see the blue, I'll chuck on the APU bleed. So, I'm dreading this, got to finish this, this chai. Well, I don't know if your show's subscribe goal. I'm trying to get to 1,000. So if you know any mates, so there we go, APU gen, off bus. Now, it took forever to understand what buses are, but basically it's an electrical node, but we'll get to that later on. So we know that that's on, so we put on the APU bleed. Okay, so we got that going. Now we do what we call setting up the mode control panel, which is really this panel here, okay? So the course, the indicated airspeed, the heading, altitude, well, depends on what, but we're not on ATC. So if you've got ATC and ATC says you cleared the Melbourne by blah, 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 via the SID climb to 5,000, runway, blah, blah, blah. So you put this on whatever they clear you up to, but we're not going to be on VATSIM. So we can just chuck it straight up to 36,000. But if you're on VATSIM, whatever altitude they've cleared you to, that's what you put in there. That's pretty. Now the heading. Now this is important. Let's go back to the electronic flight bag, and and let's go to the charts, and we want airport information, I guess. Maybe not. I don't know what we. Oh, there we go. So we've got to look at 30. Funny enough, it's on a heading of 300. Okay, so let's go. And by the way, that little blue marker is obviously me. So let's go back to now course. This is interesting. The course, if we go back to here and we go SID and we go LATAM 2, the thing is you can see here 019. Oh, sorry, not 019. What an idiot. What is it? It's 19 miles. Okay, the course, see here from the runway to the first toe cax, it's 300. So we go back to that, we put the course. Now, because sometimes the course is different from, this is really more to do when you're on the ILS or when you're coming into an arrival. Oops, got excited. So anyhow, so we do that on both the first officers and the captain's side. And now, indicated speed. Well, we go back to I should have done this before. So V2 is 132. So that's your speed that you put in there. And now it's important to have this in there because basically this is what they call the bug up speed. As soon as you take off, but we'll get to that. I'll explain to that later on. But anyhow, you've set up the MCP. This panel here is called the MC, Mode Control Panel. So, yeah, exactly. Taught me to set the heading course before taking off so you don't have autopilot. Yeah, that's precisely. But what it is, it's really important. You've got LNAV and VNAV. Now, I don't know if many people know this, and I sort of was wondering why one day I've done several flights, and I couldn't engage LNAV. Now, you can't engage LNAV, and from my understanding, if it's 5 degrees off or more from your runway heading. That's my understanding. So if your first waypoint is 5 degrees away from you or more from runway heading, then you put it on heading select, and that way you maintain your heading. You set your heading to the first waypoint rather than LNAV, because LNAV just basically draws a straight line. So I'm not sure if I'm explaining that, but there are times, and I think the other day I took off from, trying to think which, I think it was Canberra runway 35. You take off from Canberra runway 35 on the Tanta departure. The first waypoint is offset. It's not like in line with the runway heading. And so I had to engage heading select. And basically, when I took off, I'm actually I'm going I'm not following the runway heading, I'm actually following the heading that I've put up here. So more often than not, they'll be the same. But all right, so anyhow, I think I've sort of laboured on that point too much. So set up your, now this, we get to this is called the EFIS, and I don't know what EFIS means, but anyhow, this is the EFIS panel. So first of all, we've got inches and the barrow is hectopascals, but we want hectopascal. And you see down here it's 1013. Now the Q&H, just make sure, the Q&H is 1006. So that's what we got to, it's important that you get this right. Otherwise, you have all sorts of trouble. And when you change it, when you change to the correct Q&H, should reflect the altitude of the airport. That's when you know. So if I have this wrong Q&H, that's the other way to check. If your airfield elevation, if your Q&H is wrong, you'll have the wrong airport elevation. So that's the one way. That's the way to check. So, and Hobart is about 20 feet airport elevation. So, okay, so that's the first thing you do. Now the next thing is what they do, they set up what they call minimum flat retraction altitude. And what that is, it's the actual when you can accelerate. If you have an engine failure, it's the altitude that you can accelerate should you have engine failure. Normally it's set about 1,000 feet above the airport elevation. So what we do, we hit the reset there and you'll see this barrow, and you're going to basically put 1020. So it's a bit long-winded, but okay, so got one, that's minimum flat retraction altitude, and you'll see as I take off, you'll see a white bar, and once this gets above the white bar, once you pass this white bar, then I'm going to engage the autopilot. That's really, and you start to, I won't go into it, and we'll talk about V2 and all that, V2 plus 20. All right, so the EFIS, I've set the Q&H. You can put data, I'm not sure exactly what, terrain is obviously terrain, you don't want to be, and weather of course, but I think while you've got personnel on the ground, it's either the weather, I think it's the weather radar, you don't put that on while there's personnel on the ground. I think terrain, there's a terrain. So you can see here, you've got some hills there, or you're below that altitude, and if you keep flying through there, you're going to hit a mountain or hilly terrain. So anyhow, we'll do that when we get to the runway, because today we're just going to be flying over the ocean. So now auto brake, we put that to RTO, and we set the parking brake. Make sure you got the red light. We do what they call a system check, or you press this button and you make sure you've got hydraulic fluid there, which is fine. And what we do, we just check the controls. So I'm checking the elevator now, checking the ailerons, they're all good. Checking the rudder, that's all good. So, and then we press this again, because that's the next part. The reason why we press engine is because we want to know about this N2, which I'll explain to you when we get to it. We make sure the speed brake is down, and the start levers, make sure they're in the cutoff, which is these ones here. Okay, now what we do now is we do what they call a config check. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these thrust levers, and you should hear like a horn warning, and that's what you want to hear, because if you haven't configured your aircraft and you haven't done it right, this gives you a warning, which is pretty ingenious actually when you think about it. So we want to hear a warning sign. Okay, that's what we want to hear. We don't want to hear that before we take off or while we're taxiing, after we started taxiing, because we know we haven't set up the aircraft for takeoff. So we haven't configured the aircraft properly. That's basically it. Start levers cut off, stable radios are set. Well, we're not really on. These are all the radios, as you can understand. You've got navigation here, flying officers, and then you've got your nav radios up here. Sorry, your nav, and then the communication ones up here. My virtual says that I have to have this on 2000. Otherwise I'll get pinged for it. And online, you actually, once you've given your scorecode, you put this on TARA, so it shows up on the scope. Hi Arthur, how you going, mate? Glad you could join us. Yeah, this is it, mate. I don't know if you heard the introduction. Big 20th century fox, mate. Hopefully this will turn out bigger than Ben-Hur. Hopefully it'll take us all on a, like I said, bit of a venture. See how this, just see how what a shithouse pilot I am, is because I tell you what, I've had some rough landings. So please don't judge me. We're here, we all enjoy flight simming, and we're all here for common purpose. Hopefully not to be judged. Just hopefully I can impart some knowledge, and hopefully I get some positive feedback as well. So now, alt source is, you've actually got to, I'm not sure what this is, but make sure it's on 1, which is basically the captain. I don't know everything about this aircraft because it's a very complex aircraft, as you can imagine, and I think the flight manual is about 1,000 pages. So yes, I know we all have to start somewhere, but so believe me, Arthur, I'm starting right at the bottom. I can tell you right now. Anyhow, I can only get better. All right, so we've decided aileron trims. Well, we don't really need to. They're all, if you look at the back here, aileron trims, that's all set. The rudder, that's all central position. Okay, so we got that going. So, all right, so now we do the before start. Now, by the way, I don't know if you can see this properly. We've got the APU going, and I don't know if you can really see that. See the exhaust gases here? So we know that the APU, so we put the gens on for the APU, okay, and we've got the parking brake is set, yep. Now we've got it, because we've got the generator going, we can remove the ground unit, little cart. So we release him and we take off the chocks, and we can see the stairs are disconnecting. So they're all disconnecting, I think. Yep. So we're almost ready to start the engines. Doors are closed, and the way you see that is, when you see this area here, this tells you if any doors are open or anything, so we know that there are no doors open. Stairs, the chocks removed, the APU bleed is on. APU bleed over here is on, and now we do the before start checklist. So let's go and do the before start checklist. We know the IRS is in nav mode. The light test, we did the light test, is checked. The oxygen is tested 100%. Yaw damper is on. Fuel nav transfer and display switches are all normal and auto. The fuel is 5.6 required, 5.6 on board. The fuel pumps are on. The emergency exit lights are armed. The fasten seatbelt signs, I should have done this before because, are on. Pressurization mode selector or air conditioning packs are auto. Bleeds are on and set. Actually, is that 34,000? Oh, 36,000 over there. Okay, instruments, the auto brake is RTO. I think it's reduced takeoff. And now, really in the real world, they do a takeoff briefing, but I won't do any of that. N1 bug is all set, the MCP. So I reckon we're ready to start. So what we do before start, checklist and flow. So first thing first, we go to put the air conditioning packs off. Anti-collision lights. Now you're reasonably going to put this on. It's a warning to tell people we're about to start the engine. So any ground personnel, they know that. Now we check to say, yep, we got the parking brake. We check that because obviously they got to put the gear pin in when they do a pushback. Got to put the gear pin. The transponder's alt and off. Well, it's actually TARA, but that doesn't matter. Okay, so now this is a little handy. I already pre-programmed. I think I'm not sure. It's a utility you find on the internet, pushback. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. Created by ambitious pilots, but I found it on Flight Sim.io or something it's called. So it's you can plan your pushback. So we know we're going to go nose left because runway 30 is down there. Okay, so we request pushback. Now, you can push back, you can start the engines while pushing back. So you'll
cockpit to ground. This is ground, stand by.
So they're basically going to put the pins in. It's actually a handy utility, this.
Okay, sir. The bypass pin is installed. All doors and hatches closed and all ground equipment is removed. The parking brakes are set. You may lift. Parking brake set. Lifting the aircraft.
Actually, I never knew that. They actually lift the aircraft. What plug-in use for doing the ground stuff? No, it's PMDG stuff.
We are cleared for start and push.
You can... Depends.
Okay, cleared for push start. Please release parking brake.
Now, PMDG have actually modelled this the right way. Back in the day, you just had to click that, but you actually now have to depress the brake pedals to release it.
Parking brakes are released. Commencing pushback. You can start the engines in sequence. It will start in the sequence.
You can go GSX and you can make it realistic. Really, you can get your Virgin ground crew or whatever you. But anyhow, yeah. So it depends on what you spend. GSX, I don't really find a need for it. Okay, so let's put. These are the start switches basically, as you see. So you switch it to ground. You look for this N2, which is your high compression percentage of the way that the compressors are compressing there. You wait for 25. As soon as it gets to 25, you flip up and you inject fuel into the, by flipping up these Okay, so and you wait for low pressure and the start valve open, wait till they extinguish, and then we can start, we can do engine 1, and also always engine 2 started first.
Okay, pushback completed. Please set your parking brake. Parking brake set. Parking brake set. Lowering aircraft.
Okay, so now we...
Ground. You may disconnect. Okay, sir. Clear to disconnect. Pin has been removed. See you at the side. Have a good flight. Holding position waiting for the visual. Thank you and goodbye.
So waiting for N2 getting up to 25%. But there it is. Introduce fuel into the jet. So that's basically what you're doing. You're chucking. That's what these levers are. They inject fuel because you've ignited and you've got a certain compression. So these are stabilised. I think there's a rule 2246 or something. 20% N1. Let me find. I can't remember now, but there's a rule to once all these get stabilised. Lovely day in Hobart. Okay, so we got now, because the engines are now, they look like they're stabilised. Hang on. All the lights are out, so they're stabilised. So now we put the engines on the, what they call the bus, which now the engines are providing electrical power. That's what the bus is. It's an electrical node. Now, because we've got now the engine, don't need the APU anymore, so we can turn that off. And so we're now ready to taxi. Now, what we need to do is we need to do what they call an after start. So before we taxi, we need to put these into continuous mode, because just in case we get an engine flare out, is it, or engine out, you want these provide a spark, and it's a way of trying to reignite if you've got these off and you have an engine out, there's no way the engine can reignite. So these are left on continuous, so the engine tries to reignite itself should there have an engine out. Okay, now, because remember how we didn't have the probe heat, because if you have them on too early, so now we turn on the probe heats. So flame out, yeah, that would be it. That would be the word I'm looking for, flame out. Okay, so after start, the packs will go auto. So now, because the engines are on, we've got the packs, put them on auto. APU bleed obviously goes off because the APU is not working anymore. Isolation valve is auto. Flaps are set. Now we set them at 5. So, and we just look at this indicator here. We look for 5 and a green light. So you can see that the flaps are coming out. Stabilizer trim, start levers are idle detent, the flight controls are checked. Recall is checked. Now we press we don't need to see this anymore, so we blank this, so in case something happens it shows up on the screen down the bottom here. Okay, so did I miss something else? Start switches both continuous. Probe heat. Okay, so now we're ready to do a before taxi checklist. So the generators, they're all on. The APU is off. Start switches are continuous. Probe heat is on. Anti-ice not required. Air conditioned packs are auto, and the bleeds are on. Isolation valve is the one in the middle there. You can see it's in auto. Flaps 5 required, 5 selected, green light, which is good. Start levers and idle detent, and that's what the start levers, that there is idle detent. If I can sort of, that's the idle detent position. It doesn't actually tell you, it doesn't show you there, but anyhow, that's the idle detent, and recall is checked. Okay, so now we're ready to taxi. So the first thing we do is chuck on the taxi light, obviously. Now, once I release the parking brake, remember how I did a config check? Once I release the parking brakes, I don't want to hear that. If I hear it, then I'm in trouble. Then I've got to go through and try to work out, and then that's going to be, you know, this stream's going to get... Okay, I've released, you can hear that. Now, I'll do the config check. Thank God, nothing. Okay, so now I'll get into the captain's seat. Now we can just bring up the map. So what we're going to do is we're going to backtrack on runway 30. So you need to, if you're online, you need to backtrack. So you need to air traffic clearance to backtrack. Don't quad. Oh, you're trying to stir me up, are you? Yeah, I know. I tried not to notice that aircraft that was on my right-hand side. We won't go into that. I think I've laboured that point more than what I should, really. We won't talk about that other airline. Oh, hang on. I think I... Did I? Oh, okay, yep. I thought I forgot the position lights. Okay, so now we're going to enter the runway, and as most of you know, once you enter the runway, you have to put on your runway lights and all that. Oh, by the way, hopefully destinations that I'll be travelling to, and it won't be just Australia, it'll be, but I've got quite a few Orbex scenery and other scenery, not just Orbex, but other scenery, so hopefully once I start. Now, we've got to turn on all the lights, and we put our strobe and steady. So, before we go onto the runway, so... No, I actually haven't, but I'll show you because I've got it on this tablet here. Oops, bit of an overshoot. Yeah, I've got it on the tablet here. All the charts, I've got them here, and I should have actually set that up to. But you'll see them here. Actually, I think I might do better than that. But the reason I subscribe to Navigraph, and because I'm a cheap and tight ass, if I was flying purely in Australia, I'd use the DAPs, you know, because really at the end of the day it doesn't really change much. You know, the Lizzie, the Docell Wonder parts, it doesn't really change much from year to year. And, you know, for flight simming, once again, you can make it as real as you want, but I want to actually start flying in America, Europe, doing different approaches. And once I get my head around, not my head around, but once I get enough experience on this, you know, then I'll really, you know, because I'm retired and I'm self-funded, I can afford to sort of spoil myself and subscribe to Navigraph and buy all the scenery. And later on, yeah, I know, but I like the Jet charts. They've just got nice colours, whereas the DAPs are pretty boring. But like I said, the reason is in America, well, not even in America. See, if you really go to Sky Vector, all the American charts are there on Sky Vector, so you can be a bit of a cheapskate there as well. But I want to fly through Europe as well, so, and part of the virtual. So, okay, so here we are, we're coming up to, and we don't want to be doing more than 10, see the GS down below here? You don't want to be doing more than 10 knots in a turn. So, and we're going to run over these lights here. Oh, come on, come on, come on. Okay. Yeah, it is, Chris. It's cheaper than a boat, mate. That's exactly right. Okay, lining up. We have, make sure we are, landing lights are all on. Position with strobe and steady. Taxi lights. Now, you should have, as you get on the runway, you should have these off, right? And then when you get your landing, oh shit, what am I doing? I turned the bloody APU on, stupid. And yeah, here's the taxi light there. As soon as you get your clearance for takeoff, that's when you put this. That's the sort of a reminder to the crew, say, shit, have we got our takeoff clearance? Because, you know, a lot of things are happening. So, but if the landing light is on, means you have got it. So what the air crew do is they leave it off until they get their clearance, and then they they flick it down. So we're now ready. So auto throttle. So now we arm the auto throttle. Oh, by the way, I think I missed something. Flight director. And we put this onto LNAV. Okay. So basically LNAV is lateral navigation. Okay, navigation, auto throttle, arms, transponder TARA, and before takeoff checklist. Make sure the MCP is set, the transponder is TARA, strobe lights are on. Yep, that's on. Okay, so ready for the takeoff. Now, takeoff. Things happen fast. So, we get to rotational speed. You hear V1, but you won't hear rotate. That's what the first officer does. He says rotate to the captain or whoever's flying. You have a guy flying and a guy monitoring. So he'll rotate, he'll look at the navigation display, you've got positive rate, put the gear up. As you and then you climb at what they call V2 plus 20, which is V2 is your 132 plus 20. So you're trying to keep 152. As soon as you get past the minimum fraction, as soon as you get past the minimum flap retraction altitude, that's when you can accelerate. The flight director will show you this. You try to maintain V2 plus 20, and then you have at different stages you select the flaps. So hopefully, and I think that's about it really. I'm just trying to think. Oh, and you bug up as well. As soon as you bring up the gear, you bug up to what they call the bug up position. You'll see it. So I've got my thing on the honeycomb, so I do it on the honeycomb, but you know, you can do it over here as well. So, but because I've got it on the honeycomb, and then once you've retracted the flaps and basically you've cleaned up the aircraft, you can put it on the VNAV, and VNAV will then determine your altitude and speed restrictions. I think that's it. Okay, so the first thing is we make sure you go to 40%, stabilise at 40%, hit toga, and then that's it. We're ready. Let's hope it all goes well. %, stabilised, just up to about 80 knots. You keep a bit of forward pressure. Then as you get 80 knots, now I want to rotate about 2.5 degrees a second. So 80 knots.
V1.
Rotate. Now you don't want to rotate faster than 2.5 degrees a minute, so you're trying to stay under 15. Positive rate, gear up. You bug up to the bug up position. Try to follow the flight director. And trying to maintain V2 plus 20. So it's that white bug on the left. So flaps 1. You can hit VNAV. Oh. Actually, I should have. And flaps up. So there was one thing I didn't do right there. About 1,000 feet above the airport, I should have put it into that means my nose attitude was too great. I think that's what it meant. Yeah, VNAV, once you've cleaned it all up, Arthur, now I've got it in VNAV here. You can see on that. What a shitty day. All right, so now I'm climbing at what? This is a pocket rocket. 6,500 feet of. That can't be right. 6,500 feet a minute. Christ. I think the passengers are all spewing their guts out. So I think I might be pink, but see how that's the flight directors, basically, that purple, and you've got to keep where that little square there, that's where you've got to try to keep, that's what you're aiming for, where those two, see the purple lines are your LNAV, VNAV, and you're trying to get that little square on that crosshair. So that's what, now, passing 10,000, because you take your, first of all, you do what you clean up. Take this off RTO, you put your now because I've gone past 10,000, I'll put standard up there, and now your QNH is 1013. That's a lot of people fail to forget that. So that's a bit better. I'm going at about 700 feet a minute now. So yeah, so anyhow, what was I going to say? I probably forgot things. Okay, what you got to clean up the aircraft. So the RTO is, let me get, landing lights are off. RTO is off. Start switch off. Gear is up and off. Auto brake is off. Altimeters are set. After takeoff checklist. Air conditioner pressures are set. Engine start switches are off. Landing gear is up and off. You want to depressurize, that's why you bring it into that position, otherwise you pressurize the landing gear and you can stuff it up, so that's why you put it into that position. Auto brakes off, flaps are up, no lights, altimeters are set, and after takeoff checklist is complete. Alright, so the 737 is like a bit of a pocket rocket. Okay, so now we're in LNAV, VNAV, and we can see, now I'll be quite honest with you, I'm just started to, these are all different modes here. This is your thrust mode, so N1, we're in N1 at the moment, thrust mode, and we're in the climb phase. We're in the climb, what's the right word? I'm trying to think of the word now. Climb speed. LNAV, one is, that's right, these are different modes. So this is the auto throttle, or the, and where it says LNAV, that's the roll mode, and that's the pitch mode. So now I'm not sure, you'll see VNAV speed and VNAV path. I've yet to find out, and I will do at later stage, but as you can imagine, I've been doing a shitload of reading, and it's very hard to get your head around everything. So did you take out the F-18 by mistake? Yeah, I've never known that. 6,500 feet. I mean, what the hell? Come on. I mean, you know, the passengers, I tell you what, I'll probably get, I don't know, get sacked for that, wouldn't I? If we're going to do that sort of vertical speed. Anyhow, this is more like it. We're doing 2,850 feet a minute, which is more like it. Yeah, so understanding, I've still got to get my head and run VNAV speed, VNAV path. Later on, you'll see this going to VNAV path, but this is all part of my development. Like I said, this is not a tutorial. It's just that this is the way I'm doing things. I might say something, you go, oh yeah, right, I did know that. And then I might get some feedback from you guys or in the comments and say, you know what, you should have done this, or maybe you should do it that way. And yeah, so anyhow, so that's that. Now, what was I going to say? I was going to talk about the packs, I think. Yeah, okay, let's talk about this. Let's go over up here. We'll talk about this because all the rest, I can memorise all this. There's not really a lot to understand. Obviously, like for example, fuel pumps. Well, obviously, if there's fuel in the bloody tanks, you put the pumps on. If there's no fuel, you don't put them on. So all this is really self-explanatory. This is the part, this air conditioning, this packs and all this, that's where I sort of had to try to get my head around. So apparently, now this is, when you have a normal ops, okay, when you've got both engines supplying the bleed air and both packs are running, in other words, the left pack here and the right pack, when the isolation valve is in auto, as it is in there, the isolation valve closes to isolate the left and the right sides of the bleed air, and that's what you can see this. So if you close that, you see how these lines, it basically isolates the left and the right bleeds. You see, that's what this isolation valve, it can isolate the bleed air from the left or the right. Okay, so that's what these lines indicate. Okay, so, and then how this isolation valve will automatically open if an engine bleed is turned off, right? Because then what will happen is it will allow then, if you turn this off accidentally, it'll allow the bleed air coming from the other side, whether it's the right or left, to reach both the air conditioning packs. So that's what the bleed air runs the air conditioning packs. Okay, so that's how this sort of system works. And if a pack is turned off, let's say for example this pack here, I'll turn it off, to let the bleed air from both the, so the isolation valve will automatically open if, say, a pack is turned off, and it lets the bleed air from both engines reach the remaining pack, which probably will operate in a high flow mode and therefore needing more bleed air. So it's quite a crafty little system, and so I had trouble trying to get my head around all that, but that's how this operates. So once you know how this operates, then it makes sense how what you do with these left and right packs and when to turn them on. VNAV speed, constant speed, VNAV path equals changing speed to keep a constant glide path. Okay, yeah, good. Now, once you get above 300 apparently, you've got to see that there's a 10, See, I'm on, that's 25, that little, where my little arrow is, or where my little cursor is. See, this is the bank angle. So once you get to flight level 300, you turn the bank angle to 10. Because once you're at 300, it doesn't matter. It's only when you're getting below flight level 200 you need a bank angle of 25 degrees. In other words, the sharper the turns, the sharper the bank angle, the more the bank angle, the sharper the turns. But if you've got a bank angle of 10 degrees, you can imagine it's going to take a long time to do a turn. And so you don't want to be having this on 10 when you're at low altitudes. So, but when you're at high altitudes, it doesn't matter. So you can put this on 10, okay? So that's something that I learned. I didn't know that. But. All right, so now let's talk about the FMC. Let's talk about the FMC. Okay. If you guys listen to me on the air traffic control, I sometimes as approach control or center control, I say, velocity 1313, you identified, climb to flight level 240, cancel speed. If you ever get that happen, what you need to do, see how you got the speed restriction? What you need to do is press the delete button and click this key on the left here, and that will cancel your speed restriction, because at the moment the flight management computer on climb, its program, we're doing 304, I think. Mach 0.7 out, 8. Something's wrong there. Hang on. Oh, I know what I did. I missed something. Uh-oh. Okay. I think I missed something. Yeah. Oops. It's an oops moment. Yeah, okay. Because I shouldn't be doing that. That's why, because I didn't put, okay. No, that's the approach. What am I doing? Climb. I've never known this target speed of 304, and I'm thinking, what have I done? I'm just trying to get this right. Okay, while we're here, let's just request the forecast winds, just to get everything, because the top of descent is, it comes up very quickly. Now you can see here TC, which is top of climb. Okay, so we got our message, descent winds uplink, load them, and it should see populates here, and we execute. Okay, so let's have a look. This is the progress page. This is very, you can look here, you can see here, you can see these are the winds, 290 at 86. So you can see we're doing a hell of a headwind here, but the actual, if you look here, progress page, and you go to the next page, you see we've got a headwind of 64 knots. So the true airspeed is 451, but we're going only on the ground. Because we've got 60 knot headwind, it translates to a ground speed on the ground of 387. So that's what that means. That's true airspeed and that's the ground speed, because we've got this bloody terrible headwind. Now, there's another thing which I should always bring the heading bug to the track or the heading you're going, because just in case ATC says for sequencing turn left heading 100, well, you don't want to have this heading out here somewhere. It's going to take forever, so you can quickly change your heading. Now, if you go down here, I'll get it in a minute. Here we go. See, we're on VNAV path now. Okay. Have a look at this. That there's the heading. That there is our. We've got this terrible headwind, and we've got a crosswind of 38 knots from the left. You can see here. So the aircraft. Oh, look at that. The wife's brought me some chai. Beautiful. So obviously it's trying to push us to the right. So we need to head into the wind. So that's our we're heading at the moment 324. But our track along the ground is just over 317 because we got this headwind. So that's what that's showing us there. Okay, so now to top of the summit we've got 149 miles. So that's really that's also, so this progress page is monitored by the first officer, and the actual pilot or pilot flying has this. And the reason he has this Lex page open, because what happens, and I've done it to other pilots, I provide track shortening. So instead of going from, let's say for example, we go to, see how on here you take off and toe cock, toe cax, Ikita, Pidex. So, you know, some air traffic controllers say velocity 1313, track shortening available, and you'll go, oh yeah, I'll take that. So he said, cancel SID from present position, track direct to say Canley, plan route. So that's why you have this here. So he can, you put, you press Canley, well, because we've gone past Canley, but you press Canley, you put it in the scratch pad, you put it up onto the top there, and you press execute, and that provides track shortening. So, or that will execute your track shortening. Okay, so, oh, there's another thing there. I didn't know for a long time what this was, but that's basically, that's all this means is your nose attitude. So we're 3 degrees to the horizon. If we go outside, see how we're like a little bit inclined? Oh, that's loud. So that's 3 degrees. Basically our nose attitude is 3 degrees. Yeah, so once again, there's understanding the flow and why you do things is probably, geez, it's bloody hot here today, it's 32. So yeah, understanding why you do a particular thing. Now, we've got here, like I've only got 20 miles, either 10 mile and a 30, but really once you you use this button here and we put it on to about 80 miles. So there's the 40 miles. I like to have about 80 miles because 80 miles I start to get ready for the top of descent or for the descent phase. Now, what else can I talk about? Oh, there's another thing which I forgot to do. Once above 10,000, you put the seat belts on auto. Yeah, I think everything else, as long as I've got no lights should be showing up here. Well, the only light should be your window heat. Everything else should be off. Yeah. Now talk about, yep, I just changed that to 10. Now let's look at the now we're going to be doing, we'll be doing the Warren 8 Alpha. Now there's another one here too as well, ports. And that's recently, so you go Anagi, but we're going to be doing the Warren 8 Alpha. So from Warren, we're going to Misham, Gula, Actal, and then we're doing the approach. So pin that one, and then the approach, we're doing the RMB, 2,500, pin that one. Okay, so you can see we start the approach. Now because this is what they call a, see, I like the colours, see, that's the only way. See, DAPs are boring. Okay, so there's a little bit to understand about charts. You can see airport elevation 434, runway 330, so that's important for us because, well, I might as well start now, I guess. Let's get ready for the descent, shall we? So the first thing you need to do is check the weather. What's the weather like in Melbourne? Probably crap. 360, light rain showers, no significant cloud, broken, QNH 1007. So the first thing is we put the barrow, or not the barrow, the QNH. So we just turn this and see down the bottom here where it says 1002, we set the QNH 1007. Oh, by the way, see how you got FMC speed? So the auto throttle is being regulated by the throttles are being regulated by the FMC, and they're commanding a certain speed. Okay, and then the roll mode is being commanded by LNAV, and the pitch mode is VNAV path. So that's what that's telling us, I guess. And we can see here that now, many times I've heard people, I say to people, what advise you indicate airspeed because, you know, I need to sequence aircraft and whatever. And they say Mach 0.77. Well, that's if I wanted the Mach number, I would have asked for Mach number. I'm asking for the speed indicator, and that's your indicated airspeed, 258. Well, you don't tell me 258, you round it up, 260. So you say velocity 1313, advise indicated airspeed. Melbourne Centre velocity, Melbourne Centre velocity 1313 indicated 260. And then they'll say velocity 1313 for sequencing, reduce speed to 240 or whatever. So that's your indicator airspeed, and that's your FMC Mach number, which is what you're doing now. So anyhow, let's not, we're going to get our descent because while I'm waffling on, so first of all we look at our let's have a look at this first. Okay, so we got our weather. We know what the weather's like. It's a typical Melbourne, I guess. So it favours runway 34, and we got basically VFR conditions, really. Okay, so that's that. We go now for descent page, and we want a speed restriction to, yeah, I actually like to put, this is apparently, we want to go 250. Okay, so we're going to push it there. So now we go to forecast. Now, transition level is, like I said, it's 110, because the reason you put that in is because once you're on your descent, once it gets down to flight level 110, it'll ask you for your QNH. This will turn orange if you haven't changed it. So that's that. And your QNH, what was your QNH? Just make sure, Melbourne 1007. So 1007 QNH, execute that. Okay, so we've done that. Now what we need to do is we go to a fixed page. We want to put rings, 4 mile or 5 mile, depending if it's IMC or VMC, and 10 mile ring. Basically, we've got 10 miles, you want to have flaps 2 down, and by 5 miles or 4 miles, depending if it's IMC or VMC, you want to have gear down, flaps 15. Okay, and then, so they're the visual or the prompts. So you want to, so we're runway 34. And you're gonna, now because it's VMC in Melbourne, so it's 4 miles, you don't have to have 5 miles, and then 10 miles, and that'll put rings around runway 34, 10 and 4 miles. Okay, so that's the other thing you do. Now, let's have a look at the charts. 340, so you need to put that on the course. So we put 340. Now, don't forget, RNAV is not a, and I might totally stuff this up. So, like I said, I'm not 100% sure on the RNAVs because it's a non-precision approach. In other words, you're not. It's a precision approach, i.e., ILS, the glide path. You capture glide path. You don't have to do that much. You don't. But with the RNAV, you've got to check the altitudes and all that at certain times. So, and you have to manage the speed. You have to check the altitude. So there's a little bit more work. Okay. Now, having said that, there are two ways to do an RNAV, okay, and this is really important. When you've got, for example, when you've got, see how you've got the Warren 8 alpha rival? I did have, what happened to the, okay, so you've got the Warren 8 star, what am I doing? Unpin it. Let me. Okay, you can see here Warren 8, and it's what they call, it's just basically just straight legs. Okay, so that's a straight leg. So, but what they go, there are certain approach, and you can use what they call integrated approach navigation, and it's sort of like integrated approach navigation mimics the glide slope, but it doesn't say glide slope on your primary flight display. Sorry. Doesn't on here. You'll see flight path and GP glide path. So, well, actually, I'm not sure what it says here, but I know that here it says instead of GS or glide slope, it'll say GP, which is the glide path, which is it mimics the ILS. Okay, now we're getting up the top of descent here, so I've got to start moving. Now, first of all, let's go. Now, because we don't have ATC, we can put this, we're going to start the RNAV approach at 2,500. So let's bring this down to 2,500 and we'll see how we go. So once it gets past this TD, it'll just start dropping. Oh, I better have this T. So it'll drop. But hey, if you're on ATC, if you're online, they'll say, you know, you cleared the Warren 8 Alpha on runway 34 when ready, descend to flight level 250. And so you put in flight level 250. But because we're not on ATC or we're not online talking about that, I wonder if there is anyone online. Yep. William Chu, he's extending Binduk, Yarrawee, Huon, which is Tassie down here. Okay. So he's covering quite a big area. And then you've got Melbourne approach. Heidi. I don't know. This Heidi used to be a young gentleman. But he calls himself Heidi now. We won't talk about that. It is what it is. Yeah, so I've now set it to 2,500. And now, also, that's something else as well. We better go back to my charts, and because we're in LNAV, VNAV, this is the decision altitude. Okay, 690. MDA is your, what they use for the ILS, but 690, but we don't put 690 into the barrow. We have to add 40 to that, so 730 because there's a buffer. Because in the real world, if you go past 690, by the time you sort of do what you need to do and you go past this, you've got to execute the missed approach. Because if you continue past that and you land, well, or you break that, you need to go and explain it to whoever, why you went past it. So you add 30, so 730 in the barrow. We'll add 730. So the barrow here, so we do a reset and we bring it down to 730. Okay, so yeah. Just trying to okay. All right, so also what we need to do is do a performance fuel check. Now, if we go down to what they call, we go to the progress page. Now, it says here the fuel quantity when we get to Melbourne is 2.9. Okay. At the moment, we've got 3.4. So there's 500 kilos difference. So we've got to take 500 kilos off that, 0.5 off that. So we got a 55.2. That affects the gross weight, okay? So that's something else you have to do. Now, there's also the auto brake. Now, Melbourne runway 34 is fairly long, so RTO 2 or auto brake 2 is probably more than enough. Obviously, if it's a short runway, it's maximum, or if it's wet, whatever. So, okay, so the next thing we need to is look at the descent checklist. Well, actually, do you do it before you descent, or now that's something you could tell me. Do I do it on descent, before descent? Not sure. Once again, like I said, this is not a tutorial. This is just me. Hey, Sydney Light Rail fan, how you going, mate? Hey, this is it, mate. This is the start of hopefully I don't stuff up the landing. Hopefully I don't stuff up the RNAV, because I think I've only done one RNAV before and it turned tits up, so let's hope. Hopefully I've done a little bit more reading, watched another 35,854 YouTubes, still don't understand it, but anyhow, I'm sure hopefully it'll work. If it won't work, well, we just all crash and burn and have a laugh and say, well, more study required. Yeah, so anyhow, let's see how we go. I'm fairly confident, I guess. I'm fairly confident it'll work out okay. Okay, the winds are still 360 at 6 knots. Light rain shower, no significant cloud. QNH 1007. Okay. Now, one thing I should have, and it's really imperative that you actually, when you do your legs, when you check up, see, you've got here all these things here. Warren, you should be 10,000 or above. So let's go to legs. Warrant 10,000 above or above. Then you go to, you say up kid at 230, 5,000. So we go to up kid 230. It's a speed that is it's a commanded speed at 230. It wants you to do at upkid. You have to be doing 230 knots. You can't be doing any slower, and you have to be at 5,000 or above. And then Gula is 4,000 or above, which is okay. Next page, Balti, 3,000 or above, and then Actal, maximum 185 knots. And Actal, it says there 180, that's a hard, and 2,000 or 2,500 or above. So, yeah. So that's all set. Yeah, I'm not bad, mate. Like I said to the guys, I've just become a virtual person these days. Virtual air traffic controller, virtual pilot, and probably there's virtual sex as well. So hey, but I'm happy. I'm happy with my life, retired, living the dream. Hey, does it get any better than this? Mind you, having a Swedish girlfriend did cross my mind. But anyhow, I had to whisper that. See, I'm not one of these lucky guys who've got a spare room like Sessim. He's got a spare room to let. And, yeah. Anyhow, it is what it is, mate. So what was I going to talk about? Okay, on the descent, I'm trying to think of, that's something else too, which there's a thing called NADPs, which are, different airports have what they call different NADP, which are noise abatement department procedures. Okay, so now we're in descent. You see we passed the descent point. We're now on descent. And that green thing is they call it the green banana. It's basically, you hear those throttles. Yeah, see the throttles coming right down. Now, also, once I'm on descent, I like to sort of bring this to 40. So we go up here and bring this to 40. And then once I get onto the approach, I'll bring it right down to a 10. Okay, so now, let me explain a few things. This is our indication. This is required navigation performance and actual. We're required on VNAV. This is our lateral and this is our vertical. Laterally, we required navigation performance of 2. We're well inside that. We're 0.07, so our accuracy, that fulfills that. This is our vertical navigation performance. We required 400. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the 400 means. 400 feet, 400 kilometres, I'm not sure. But our actual navigation, so is that well below 400? Okay, so we're both vertically and laterally, we're well within the navigational tolerances. Okay, so we're okay there. Now, are we above profile or below profile? Because when you're descending, you're on a certain profile. Well, this tells you. See this white marker here? That's where we are. That purple magenta diamond where we should be. So because we're under it, right, we're below profile. Okay, and we're below profile by 30 feet, which is really stuff all. Okay, so that's that. That's what that is. And you can see here that this purple is where we should be, this white is where we are, and we're basically on profile. This white is where we, so that's basically, that tells you whether you're on profile, that and that together. You can see that there, that tells you if you're on profile or not, whether you're above profile, below profile, descent profile that is. And you can see that The FMC commands 260 and we're just doing under that, we're doing 256. Now if we're higher, if we're well above that, say we're doing 280, well, then we need to probably bring out the speed brakes. Okay, so anyhow, that's that. What else is there? Okay. Over here, let's go to the first officer side. Now, because we're not online, and over here if you hit the center, if you hit this twice, see this. Now, I'm not sure, VSD, Vertical Situation Display, I think this is called. Now, we'll see as we're getting closer to the approach, and we can see our profile there. If the airport, we have like a white stripe, is on that grey line, that you've set the proper QNH, okay? In other words, 1007, okay? So, but we'll see that as we get closer and closer. So that's, now actually I read this the other day, what these two blue lines mean. I'm not sure exactly what they mean. Oh, okay. I think I know what they are. Let's put in the radar, the terrain radar. Let's have a look at that. Is it working? Is it working? Is it working? Terrain radar is on. Okay. This is interesting. I think I read this the other day, and I think I've got this right. These two blue lines here, what they call the en route swathe. Now, because we're flying over ocean, we don't see any hills or anything. But let's say, for example, we're going through hills and mountains and whatever. What if that en route swathe, if we're going through hilly country, and let's say if this was yellow, this area was yellow, or this two blue lines are going through yellow, you would see that it will be shown on this vertical situation display. You'll show that it shows you the terrain, and if you're flying level, it shows you if you're going to hit a mountain or something. So the pilot monitoring say, hey captain, I think we'd better climb because we're going to be hitting a mountain soon. So that's what this blue line, the blue dashed line, is what they call the en route swathe. And it shows you, but because we're going through the ocean. Now hopefully once I go, I don't know, in America or something, we've got all sorts of mountains and over the Los Angeles hills or whatever, or no, which state? There's a state was particularly hilly, it's got mountainous terrain. This will show up better, but at the moment you can see here there's terrain is like this, nothing, because we're over the ocean, I think. I'm not sure, but have a look. Oh, we're just coming over the land, okay. So anyhow, yeah, there it is. Okay. So we just got to keep monitoring this. We're on profile, we're there, and we're on, speed is below the commanded speed, but that's okay, that's not a big problem. Now if I bring this out to, I'll bring it down to 10 now, because as we're getting closer, you'll see the 4 mile and 10 mile rings. And I'll get ready for, let's just make sure I've got auto brake 2 as required, descent. Okay, let's have a look at the descent checklist. Actually, I think it's here. Pressurization, landing altitude is checked, recall is checked. Auto brake is auto and armed. Landing data, VREF. There's the VREF, 130. So we're going to be doing VREF plus 5, so about 135. Hopefully over when we cross the numbers, we're doing 135, or we try to keep that. Landing and approach briefing. Don't worry about the approach briefing. And descent checklist complete. Okay, so now you see this armed. This is basically what that's saying is I can have full control of these throttles now because it's armed. I can do what I want because it's in the arm position, but I now have control. You see up here, I don't have any control over the speed of the aircraft because you see here indicate airspeed. Now, if you're doing an ILS approach, and as soon as it captures the glide slope, you'll see it will give you, you'll be able to control the speed. Now, if I want to take control of the speed, I have to hit the speed intervent, and then I've got full control, but I'm not going to touch that, A, because I'm not experienced enough, and I don't want to stuff it up because yeah, so yeah, all right, Arthur. You're at Coffs Harbour. Oh, that's a lovely place. Yes, any time. I'm not sure how you get in touch, but yeah, any time. Do a group flight. Like I said, hopefully this will be bigger than 20th Century Fox. That's how big it's going to get. Don't worry about anybody else. Pushing 10 is going to be pushing the barriers. Okay, so now, once we get past 10,000 feet, certain things we have to do. First of all, let's put our bank angle back to 25 because we don't want to be turning at 10 degrees. So we got to put seatbelt signs are on. We got QNH 1007. The winds have changed to 030. Cav OK, so it's perfect conditions. And now you've got these two dots. There's the decel points. You'll see the aircraft will pitch up and it'll decelerate because you're going to be 10,000, so it has to be under 250 knots below 10,000. So after at 10,000, we put the fixed landing lights, runway lights on, pressurization we check, recall check. So that's what we do. There's Port Phillip Bay. Looks all right, actually. I went to Tasmania, I don't know, early in the year, May, and actually this is the flight I actually flew on. So I actually was on this flight. When I back to Adelaide, sorry, what do you mean when I'm back in Adelaide? When I back to Adelaide. When I'm back to Adelaide. I'm not sure what that means. I've still got to work out why I did a climb at 6,500 feet a minute. That's obviously stuffed up there. So, anyhow. And now, after all that, now this is, you know how every place has got, or every virtual's got their way of recording the flight. Well, guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to do the start recording. What a goose. Anyhow, that's okay. So I don't know what my landing speed's going to be, or anyhow. Yes, I want to quit. So I forgot to start it up. Anyhow. Now, the thing is, because on the RNAV VNAV, it's up to you. Oh, standard, there we go. So we press that. And now we put on our landing lights. Oh, no, not taxi lights, sorry. Bank angle 25, pressurization as required, recall check. Okay. Now let's have a look. You can see here. See how. But as we get close to approach, we should see the runway, and if we've got the wrong QNH, you see the little white strip. But because we're still at 10,000, okay, so. Now I could have done the port 7 alpha arrival, but, and I don't know why I didn't do it, but anyhow. So we do it well. See, the FMC is commanding 250 because that's what that, you can see this is the MCP or the FMC. That's what's been put in here or in here. So we're coming up to Mitcham, which is 4.5 miles away, roughly 4.5 nautical miles away. And at Upkid will be commanded 250 hard speed restriction, 230, and 5,000 or above. So I'm very happy. If I was doing faster than that, then I need to speed brake. Actually, there's another thing too, talking about that, that's what I wanted to talk about. This is a very complicated aircraft, and because you're flying these things, there's a thing called energy and descent management, what they call energy and descent management. In other words, let's say, for example, you're high on profile. How do you actually recover to get you back on profile? Now, you can see this is my rings. Now we turn the heading bug to match, and we bring this down to 10 miles now. So, like I said, we always try to keep that heading. And also there's another thing. When do I put the flaps out? Well, that's what that rings are for. At 10 miles you want to be basically flaps 5. When do you start your flaps? Well, this is what this is. See how you said speed REST? As soon as you see flaps there, that's when you put flaps 1 speed, or flaps 1, okay? And because you're on the, and then what you do, you speed into VAT, and we start controlling the speed ourselves. So we have to manage our lateral and our vertical, and so we take control of our speed, and oh, that's another thing. I better have a look. Now let me get this right, because this is where I normally stuff it up. Okay, 1650. There's Melbourne down below. So we know we've got 2,500 put in the MCP, And then once we cross 2.5 miles from Bosky, which is the final approach fix there, we go down to 1650. But I think what we can do, we put into 730 on the MCP, and that'll put us down to, I think, but like I said, I'm not sure. So we're doing 220 knots. So we got over the top of Neziara. So now this is where it all goes can get pear-shaped. Let's just hope I don't stuff it up. Okay, see where it says flaps, and we do speed into vent. Now we bring down the speed, we're controlling the speed now, so we're going to flaps 1 speed. And we're doing, so we go down to flaps 5, and we bug it down to flaps 5, because we want to be at 10 miles, which is, we're in that 10-mile ring. And we're on our descent to 2,500. Now we go to 340. And there's the runway in front of us up to the right. So 5 miles, want to be 15 flaps 15. Now it says 2.7 from to Bossy, so let's see if I fucked this or stuffed this up, sorry. So
2,500.
So we're on our descent now. I'll put it 800. Now 4 miles, we put down our gears, flap 15. And let's see how we go. This all could all turn to shit. Let's just hope. We're on profile, that's a good thing. And we're on descent, and we're on descent about 750, which is, if you take half of that, we're on a good speed. So we're approaching, so put the gear down, flaps 15, and we bug down to flaps 15. Bug down to flaps 15 speed. Oh yeah, now we go, missed approach altitude, 4,000. Flaps 30. Oh, I knew I'd fuck it up. Yeah, bastard. I don't know what I did wrong, but yep. Oh well, I knew it. I'm doing something wrong. So anybody, I'm way on profile. Anyhow. So anybody can tell me what I'm doing wrong. Please put it. Anyhow, let's just see. How are you, Aviation Chris? You're the man who I should need to talk to about all this, because I really stuffed that up. This is only my second attempt at an RNAV. There's Melbourne. Say hello. Goodbye. See you later. Thanks for coming. All right, guys. Well, you know that I had a feeling that I'd stuff it up because this is where I always stuff it up. Anyhow, and arm the speed brakes. Yeah, I know. I forgot all that, but in my panic. But anyhow, that was it. I can only get better. Until next time, guys. And you don't want to see me hand flying this, and I don't want to see myself hand flying it. So I've got a long way to go. Yeah, that's what I thought I did too. I left altitude too late before 2,500. But anyhow, that's all right. I'm on the journey. Yeah, it probably is actually. You're right. Actually wants to go to 4,000. But that's all right. No worries. I haven't practiced my missed approaches. But anyhow, like I said, and by the way, Aviation Chris, I'll be heading your not your territory. I know you're. I've joined Ryanair because I want to do a bit of flying in Europe, and the airlines that I'm with, or the other airline, don't do a lot of flying in Europe. So Ryanair is the one. All right, guys. Well, anyhow, sorry I stuffed up the landing. Luckily, I wasn't. It's not being recorded by my. Actually, the scenery is fantastic.
Bank angle.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of shit happening. All right, guys. Well, I'm sorry I stuffed up the landing, but that's the way it is. It's a simulator, and when the white bar. Yeah, that's right. When the white bar. In other words, you're talking about the white bar on the altitude tape, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. As soon as that comes in, then you dial in the missed approach altitude. Yep. Where is the airport? It's over there. And I'm way too high. I'm not even gonna. Yeah, I'm 6,000. All right, guys. Well, that's it. I'm going to tell you what. This yoke wants to really push. Yeah, that's the other thing. I forgot to check the lights here on this thing. Those lights there. But anyhow, it's a journey, mate. And like I said, it's a simulator, and I've got a lot to learn. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to Aviation Chris, and hopefully my results will be a lot better than what you saw. Anyhow, it's good to see you guys on, and hopefully the feedback will teach me something. Until next time, guys, take care. Cheers. See ya.